Have you ever wondered how much money you could have made by dollar cost averaging, but you never really started dollar cost averaging, so you don't know how much you could have made? Well, in this video I'll show you how to calculate that in Excel. So as you can see here, I have a table that lists the dates and the amount of money I spent, and then to calculate the total shares and eventually the profit of how much I could have made over the last 8 months. So let me show you how this works. All I have to do is change the ticker. So if I'll put in Apple. So Apple, I would have made $46.25, and then I can also change the dollar amount, and it'll populate that. So now, if I would have spent $100 instead of $50, then I would have made $92.50 over 8 months. I also added another way to calculate. So if you only know the number of shares that you want to purchase instead of the dollar amount, then you can do that too. So in this case, I purchased 50 shares every single day of FedEx, which would be kind of expensive, but that's what I did. And then I calculate the price for each day, and I get the total value of stock. And so if I would have purchased 50 shares every month for the last 8 months, I would have made about $5,800. So if I change that to Apple, I would have made about $12,300. So let me show you how to make this table for yourself. The first thing you want to do is you want to be able to calculate the stock price for a given day. So the way stock history works in Excel is you give it a stock ticker. So like we'll do FedEx, and then you give it a beginning date. So we'll do today, and then we'll do the today but 7 days ago, so last week, and then we'll give it an end date of today, and press enter. And what you can see here is that you actually get a range of values. You get the date and the closing price, and so it doesn't include weekends because the stock market's not open on the weekends. So if we want to get the last stock price, so for 8/5, if we want to get the last stock price, how can we do that? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to sort the table, and then we're going to sort by the first column, so that's the date, and then we're going to sort in descending order, so we're going to give it a -1. And then you can see here that puts this date first. And so now what we can do is we can take the index of that table, and we'll get the second row and the second column, and so that'll give us just that value on that first day. So that's 310.72. So now we can take this function and we can paste it into another sheet, and we can calculate historic prices. So before I begin that, let me copy this example. And then paste that in here. Alright, so we know how to get the price for one day, so I'm going to copy this here. I'm going to paste it into the last closing box. So the ticker, we're going to replace that with the ticker that's typed in the cell B1, and then we're going to keep the date the same, so because we want to get the last closing price, so we're based on today. So all I gotta do is press enter. And so the last closing price for Apple was $311, and then now we need to take this same function instead of calculating the price for today, we want to calculate it for a different day. So I'm going to replace this today with the date that's going to be in cell A10, and I'm going to replace the closing date or the end date with the same date. So right now it's erroring because we don't have a date in here, but now I can type in 1/1/2026, and so on that day the closing price was $271.86. So how many shares would I get if I spent $50? So I type an equal sign, and then I do the dollar amount divided by the price, and that'll give us the number of shares. So I got about 0.18 shares. So to calculate the total sum of shares, we're going to do sum of D10, and then we'll go to D999, so we can just sum up a whole bunch of them. And then to calculate the total value, if we were to sell the stocks today, we take the share count multiplied by the last closing date, and so that would be $57.20. So our cost would be the sum of all the amount of money we spent. So it'd be B10 to B999, and then our profit would be the value minus the cost. So if we would have bought $50 worth of shares on January 1st and we would have sold them today, then we would have made about $7.20. Alright, so now we can go ahead and populate the rest of this. So I'll do 2/1/2026, and I'll fill this out, and then dollars, let's come down, and then the price will come down. Oh, I got an error. This needs to reference this cell with an absolute value. Alright, now this should work. Alright, and then shares will come down here. Alright, so how can we do a similar thing? How can we calculate how much money we would have made if we were just putting in the number of shares that we would have bought? So this is pretty similar. Change this to shares, and this will be value. So the total number of shares, let me format this as a number. The total number of shares would equal the sum of G10 to G999, and then the total value would be the same. The cost would be different. Cost would be sum of I10 to I99, and the profit will be the same. Alright, so we need to change how the value is calculated. The value is actually going to equal the shares times the price. So we'll drag that down, and so that's how you do it. So let's put in some different stock tickers and see what we got. Let's do Tesla really quick just to test it out. So Tesla, we would have lost $75. Let's do Google. Google, we would have made $25, and then we'll do AMD. So AMD would have made $258. Alright, so that's how you calculate how much money you would have made if you were dollar cost averaging. If you want to see how to do this in Google Sheets, leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and see you in another video.